There seems to be quite the divide within this game's community when it comes to offering critiques, and because of this, there's a lot of stigma around a common response to criticisms leveled at the game. That response being, it's in early access. For the rest of the video, I'll be referring to this as the early access defense. I know you've probably already got your hands on your keyboard and are typing in my comment section, so before you hit send on whatever it is you're going to say, please, hear me out. Currently, a lot of self-acclaimed critics who see Path players respond to their critiques with the early access defense will claim that those players are using it as a means of trying to silence dissent and protect Alderaan from any form of criticism. On the flip side, those players who deploy the early access defense will likely claim that these critics aren't critics at all and are just being angry for the sake of being angry. The critics are right in that the game deserves to have its issues pointed out and discussed, and that Alderaan themselves should not be immune to criticism. Alderaan Games is a studio made up of human beings. Human beings are capable of making mistakes, and they need to be held accountable for those mistakes. Tyranna Titan's release is a perfect example of a situation where criticism was necessary in order for positive change to occur. In that same breath, however, there were a lot of problems with how the community at large chose to handle that situation, and those problems persist into modern criticisms of Path. That being hate speech, death threats, personal attacks, and otherwise disrespectful attitudes or comments. Behavior like this is completely unacceptable and shouldn't be tolerated. The players on Alderaan's side have every right, dare I say a duty, to defend Alderaan from such immature and unproductive commentary. However, problems arise when these community members get too fanatical with their crusade and stop being able to tell the difference between needless hate and actual constructive criticism. In summary, they are both in the right and both in the wrong. The truth is, both sides of this argument have gotten so caught up with fighting with one another, often catching those around them in the collateral, that they seem to have forgotten what "it's in early access" is even supposed to mean, or when it's appropriate to use. So why don't we turn those swords into plowshares and get into the root of this? The early access defense isn't a shield. It cannot and should not protect Alderaan from being rightfully called out when they screw up. What the early access defense is, and should be used as, is a reminder. A reminder that making games is hard. That it takes a lot of time, preparation, dedication, and hard work for an indie studio to not just make a game, but to make it succeed. A reminder that the people on the other side of your computer screen are exactly that, people. That we need to treat them as such. Path of Titans is approaching its 8th year of development, and it's come a long way since then. But there's still a long way to go, and Matt seems to have a fairly strict development schedule in mind to make sure this game actually gets finished. It's not that Alderaan isn't hearing what you have to say, it's just that they might not be able to do anything with that feedback right away. I'm not saying they always listen, but I am saying to give them a chance. Have faith. Have patience. Change will come, and with it a new chapter and new problems. So let's face it head on, with dignity, respect, and dedication to be a better, brighter Path of Titans. Call me a hopelessly optimistic idealist if you want, but this is how I feel, and I think this is the best path forward. Until next time.